May I request Mr. Sundareshan to review the questions posted, and I request him to elicit their reply from our distinguished speaker. Over to JS, please.
Thanks, Rajiv and Akshay. That was an amazing presentation. And, I have a quick question for you. There are a lot of people across industry here. So if they were to have a risk management committee, in your view, what should be the first 3 agenda points for discussion?
It's a great question and it caused me to think. Look, I think the first, if you never had a risk committee, the first task is to identify the major risks of today.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you must have a framework for evaluating those risks. That which is important, which is not important, and so we don't waste time chasing shadows. And thirdly, when you have identified the major risks, you have to have a clear mitigation plan. Forget the future. Abhi to aaj ka risk, identify karna hai. So we have to, if you're starting out, you have to look at what is the most important risk of today, figure out a framework of continuously evaluating and then mitigating that particular risk. So those are the 3 things I would say that need to be done.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. So I have a question from Daman. He says, there are a lot of large corporates which do not have a risk management function. What do you perceive of this, and what do you think can go right or wrong for these companies?
In a facetious way, I would call Arun and I say, Arun, find out these companies and sell. Don't hold that stock. Look, frankly, I think everybody has a risk management function. They may not call it risk management. In many cases, the CFO plays that role. A wise and experienced CEO and a chairman will play that role. The board will play that role because that is part of being successful in business. So I cannot see a successful company who does not manage risk well. They may not call it a risk management function, but they will be managing risk in their own way. But I think more importantly, I think now we see the risk committee is a well understood function. The function of the risk committee changes. So if you're in a bank, for instance, your risk is not just financial risk and other risks. The biggest risk is regulatory risk. Your second biggest risk is doing harm to your customers. And the third biggest risk is your own balance sheet that, do you have enough liquidity to meet all the demands on the asset side? So the nature of the risks will change depending on what business you are in. But I just find it hard to imagine any company who is blissfully ignorant of risk and is doing well.
Okay, while on that, let me ask you another one. Are people confusing between this audit committee and risk committee? In the sense, can both coexist?
They both must coexist, and both do coexist in a very beautifully collaborative manner. I think risk committee is a subset of audit committee, the way it is constructed everywhere. And I speak for myself as the chairman of the risk committee for Mindtree. We have our own meetings, and we report to the audit committee. And then we, of course, report to the board as well. So this is just a devolution of authority that should exist in any well-structured board. Because ultimately, all these committees, be it audit committee or risk committee, what is their role? To help the board in its oversight and oversight function for the company's operations. So I think there is no conflict between audit and risk. In fact, I see great complementarity.
So what do you think a risk committee should discuss, which an audit committee need not discuss? Why I'm asking you this is, many a times it happens that, people say, okay, anyways, audit committee is the committee which is the core committee, and risk committee passes it off to, I'm just saying. And
I hear what you're saying. Look, the first thing I would say is that there are many people in this call who are far, far more qualified and experienced than I am to answer that question. But if I may say so, look, if the risk committee is not taking its function seriously, then that's a problem in and of itself. What it cannot do is abdicate responsibility to a higher committee. Then the audit committee can do the same with the board. saying, look, we are just a committee, the board is the ultimate responsible, why should we care? You must care. You have a fiduciary obligation and a duty to do this. And I think the process of natural challenge and response is a very healthy one. So if, for instance, the audit committee feels that risk committee is either not focused on something properly or not gone into enough detail, it must probe, it must challenge, and it must satisfy itself that the risks have been properly identified and the appropriate actions have been taken. And similarly for the board, if it ever feels that the audit committee hasn't done what it's supposed to do, it must challenge and probe and satisfy itself.
Yeah. Lakshmikant is asking you a question, which is how to value financial loss from cyber risk. I thought first
once cyber risk happens, it is very easy to value financial loss.
No.
But what you have to value is what can happen. And if that happens, the loss is not always financial. The loss is reputational. Look at Accenture. Last week, this thing happened. Nobody's going to forget about it for months until the next big one comes along. So it is not always a financial loss. It is the distraction that the company faces. It is the stress that is created within the system. It is the reputational damage that happens. There are many aspects to this. That's why I worry about cyber risk much more than risk of losing money or a bad debt or something like that. That's finite. It's controlled. You can write it off and you're done. Cyber risk, you're not done, and new ones will emerge every day.
Okay. Gopal, one of the senior guys, are asking, in your experience, did any company in the world predict COVID type of risk and prepare a mitigation plan?
Ask companies in Wuhan, maybe they did. I don't know. The COVID is a black swan event. How could you ever predict COVID at the scale and breadth at which it happened? You can't. We all say it's a once in a lifetime risk. I just hope it is once in a lifetime risk. I don't want to see any more in my lifetime, for sure.
So from that, let me take a cue. So post-COVID, do you think the risk committee's job is to evaluate the mitigation plans and other things, and how does that work?
I will give you a non-traditional answer. Of course, the risk committee's job is to manage mitigation plans and whether company is dealing with it all right. But I think there are bigger challenges coming. Take work from home, which happened because of COVID. One of the biggest implications of work from home that I personally believe has not been sufficiently understood because it hasn't been experienced as yet is the lack of connection that the employee feels with the company. Let's say you're an IT company in India, you employ 1 lakh people, and let us say your attrition is 20%. Then in the last 18 months, you had 30,000 people who are brand new to the company, who have never been to the office, who have no idea what the company looks like, has never worked there. 30% of the company hasn't done that. Wait one more year, it will go up to 50%. Then half your company has never been to the office. How do you create a feeling of belonging and engagement with the company? These are very, very big risks, potentially, especially in India where large companies employ a lot of people. I don't know how to deal with that, but I worry about them a lot. Even in a small company like mine, which is like 45 people, even there, I worry about people who have now worked with us for a year, who've never met anybody else from the company.
Yeah. So Margaret has a question. She says, you mentioned about cryptocurrency, Bitcoins, and that there would be no banks and central bank to manage. What would happen to futures and options or interest rate markets?
Good question. There are futures and options and derivative markets on crypto. So you can buy a forward contract on Bitcoin or something else. But they pretty much operate in the same way. The real challenge what is happening in the crypto world, it is legitimizing at lightning speed. It is legitimizing so fast that you cannot even understand. I certainly cannot get my head around it. Every time I read in the papers, JP Morgan is going into crypto, Citi is going into crypto, Vanguard is looking at a crypto index fund. And, where is all this coming from? And that is legitimizing the cryptocurrency industry. But it is still a fringe activity. It doesn't really affect mainstream. The moment the Bank of England says that we will create the crypto pound, and you can hold it in in an electronic wallet, and you can use it for anything you want anywhere in the world, and we will control and make sure the transaction goes well. What does that do? I don't need a bank any longer. I can pay my suppliers in India with that. I can pay my employees with that. I can ask my customers to pay me with the crypto pound. I just don't need the banking system any longer. It will change the accepted order, and that is what is the scariest thing about what is happening. And these are just some things that people wiser than me have thought of, and I've just read about it. There are things that nobody has thought of. And my fear is that the first people to think about it will be criminals who will immediately try and figure out some way of creating financial advantage for themselves out of it. Because that is the biggest incentive to innovation, if I can say that, personal financial gain. And so, it'll get a lot murkier before it gets clearer.
Yeah. So I'll just take one last question, and Premal, Arun, I'll reserve the questions that you have asked to some other speaker, because 30 minutes is not good enough for us to be spending time with a personality like Mr. Bhargava. We would have loved to have you for more time. One last question. Between audit committee and risk committee, which has more risk? No.
What do you mean, which has more risk? Phrase your question correctly.
Because many a time directors keep asking, which committee should I join? I say CSR committee, but that's not a fair answer, right? I mean, the least risk committee. But between the risk committee and the audit committee, which one do you think is more riskier in the days to come?
No, there is one answer for the committees, but there's another answer for what committee should I join. You should join the committee where you understand what is going on and you can add the most value. I think there is no ambiguity there. If CSR doesn't turn you on, you don't get excited about public good. Why would you waste time over that? If you don't understand the risk, if you don't understand the financials, you're not financially qualified or trained, then you will struggle in the audit committee. So which committee to join is a reasonably straightforward sort of determination. Which has more risk? I don't know. I think I would say, audit committee has a broader charter which encompasses the risk committee. Therefore, if you had to pick the two, the BRC is narrower and the audit committee is a bit broader. So clearly it has more responsibility and therefore because of the scope.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.